What happens when a nation, once dependent on its rival for critical military technology, is suddenly betrayed and forced to forge its own path under fire? Imagine Ukraine, caught in the brutal grip of relentless aggression, digging in to repel hordes of enemy drones and crushing assaults every single day. For years, they stood on the defensive, barely holding their ground as waves of invaders pushed harder. But deep beneath that desperate struggle, a silent revolution was brewing, one that would soon change the entire battlefield. Ukraine's story isn't just about survival, it's about a determined rise from the ashes of dependence. For decades after the Soviet collapse, Kyiv leaned heavily on Moscow's missile technology, missiles, parts, expertise, all flowing from Russian factories. That fragile alliance shattered in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, abruptly becoming not an ally but a glaring enemy. Overnight, Ukraine faced a stark reality: it could no longer rely on its powerful neighbor for weapons that would keep it safe. Stranded but unbroken, Ukraine turned inward. It inherited some legacy missile factories, household names like Yuzhnoye and Yuzhmash, soon rebranded as Pivdenmash, along with the Luch Design Bureau, specialists in long-range missile systems. Despite ongoing conflict, Ukrainian engineers launched bold efforts to breathe new life into missile creation. They rolled out the Vilka guided rocket, a precise 300mm weapon joining their arsenal in 2018. By 2021, they had unleashed the R-360 Neptune, a sleek cruise missile designed to hunt ships far beyond their shores. Even tentative export talks with Indonesia hinted that Ukraine was quietly stepping onto the global missile stage. Yet, at the dawn of 2022 and the massive invasion months away, Ukraine's missile industry remained small compared to Russia's sprawling stockpiles and sprawling factories. Unlike its gargantuan adversary with its near-limitless budget, Ukraine's arsenal was modest, still a fledgling force grappling with limited resources. Then, the war erupted. The sky was alive with explosions and the thunderous crack of artillery. Moscow's missiles sought to cripple Ukraine's missile capability itself, launching strikes at vital production hubs. The Pivdenmash plant in the industrial city of Dnipro was targeted late in 2022. Meanwhile, the Pavlograd chemical plant, responsible for solid rocket fuel crucial to the elusive RIM-2 short-range ballistic missile project, faced repeated attacks in 2023 and 2024. The smell of smoke, the echo of distant blasts, the grim determination of workers spared no respite. Caught in a dire bind, Ukraine's commanders faced a heart-wrenching choice. Their soldiers fought desperately to hold borderlands and key fronts while missile innovation struggled to keep pace with the destruction. Could they afford to halt promising weapons programs to focus purely on defense? Abandoning missile development could spell disaster, but resources were scarce. Kyiv opted to streamline, pushing to get the RIM-2 project off the ground despite funding woes. They used what they had, firing Neptune missiles effectively. Destroying the Russian cruiser Moskva in April 2022, a stunning blow against a legendary warship. That moment was a turning point. Engineers began modifying Neptunes to hit land targets, adding jamming-resistant GPS guidance and precision targeting to outsmart Kremlin defenses. Progress was slow, shadowed by attacks and shortages, but determination never wavered. Then, as the war pressed into its second year, came a game-changer. In May 2023, Ukraine received powerful long-range missiles, Storm Shadow from the UK and Scalp-G from France. Hundreds of these million-dollar weapons capable of striking targets over 155 miles away entered Ukrainian hands. These missiles shattered the myth that Kyiv was defenseless, devastating Russian naval bases and elite command centers in Sevastopol. Later, the arrival of American MQ-9 Reaper missiles, known as ATACMS, added a new lethal reach. They flattened Russian airbases and wiped out dozens of troops, a resounding message that Ukraine was no longer just surviving but set to dominate. Yet, amid these victories, stark lessons emerged. The West's generosity was undeniable but limited. Ammunition often came with strings, restrictions on where missiles could strike, cautious reluctance to escalate. Some allies hesitated outright, fearing the conflict might spiral beyond control. Ukraine realized a hard truth: To really shift the war's course, it needed to master its own missile production, free from foreign strings. By summer 2023, that vision became real. Modified Neptune missiles blasted an S-400 radar station deep in Crimea, marking a bold return strike. Small but deadly drone swarms and mini-cruise missiles began waging their own secret war, igniting fires in enemy supply lines, grounding aircraft, disrupting fuel depots. Engineers worked feverishly on Long Neptune, promising missile ranges unheard of in Ukrainian history. Partnerships with small startups and foreign innovators bolstered production, weaving a web of resilience that grew stronger by the day. By the end of 2024, Ukraine had assembled significant stocks of compact strike drones like Ludiai and FP1, alongside Ruda and Peklo missiles. These weapons weren't about annihilation, instead, they dealt precise, surgical damage, a constant irritation wearing down the giant enemy. The battlefield was transforming. The once underdog nation, battered and besieged, was pushing the limits of science and skill to strike fear into the heart of its aggressor. But how far could this missile revolution go? Could Ukraine's burgeoning arsenal break the iron grip of its powerful foe, or would relentless attacks on production plants snuff out this fragile spark? The next chapters in this unfolding conflict hold answers few dare to predict. Summary of the previous part. As Ukraine navigated the complexities of missile development, it focused on deploying the Vilka-guided rocket and the R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missile. Despite initiating talks for international partnerships and battling funding issues, Ukraine's missile industry began to take shape. However, it lacked the extensive resources that Russia possessed, making it vulnerable when conflict escalated. In the shadow of war, a nation is not merely trying to survive, it is fighting to thrive. As dawn broke in early 2022, Ukraine found itself caught in a storm of chaos and aggression. Russian forces surged across its borders with relentless fury, creating an urgency that left no room for hesitation. Would resistance hold, or would the storm take everything? Ukraine's missile development programs were fragile, yet the determination to strike back grew stronger with every bombardment. The nation had started to grasp the mechanics of modern warfare, leveraging its remnants of Soviet technology. Structures like the Pivdenmash plant struggled under external threats, as Russian missiles crashed into vital production facilities. Imagine the chaos, the sound of sirens, the acrid scent of smoke lingering in the air, and the palpable tension among workers realizing their labors were under siege. Just 4 months into the conflict, attacks on strategic infrastructure intensified, particularly focusing on missile innovations like the RIM-2 program. The story hung in the balance, teetering on the knife edge between progress and destruction. Yet, amid the chaos, a flicker of resolve ignited. Ukraine faced the harsh reality of funding cuts and diminishing timelines, all while defending its homeland against a colossal invasion. But surrendering wasn't an option. Evidence mounted that the Kremlin aimed to impede missile production, attacking strategic sites like the Pavlograd chemical plant, crushing not only Ukraine's morale but also its hopes of rapid advancement. Decisions flowed behind closed doors. Had the leadership opted to streamline the RIM-2 program in a desperate bid to bring an operational missile to life swiftly? The pressure was on. Each ticking second loomed large, echoing in the hearts of those who felt the weight of the nation on their shoulders. Would they find a way to reclaim the offensive before it was too late? In the previous segment, we explored Ukraine's struggle to maintain its missile development amidst an overwhelming invasion. Facing a critical need to respond with their own weapons, they likely decided to expedite the RIM-2 program. They also made clever use of existing missile stockpiles, notably launching R-360 Neptune anti-ship missiles against Russia's notorious Moskva flagship, which met its end in April 2022. With engineers working tirelessly, Ukraine aimed to adapt the Neptune to target land-based enemies and enhance its precision. Hoffman speculated that this involved integrating a jamming-resistant GPS and a terminal guidance system. Yet, during the first year of conflict, Ukraine's missile sector faced considerable barriers, limited funding, resources, and debilitating Russian strikes targeting infrastructure. But then came a turning point in 2023. In May, Ukraine acquired long-range strike capabilities that could change the course of the war. Shipments of advanced Storm Shadow and Scalp-G missiles from the United Kingdom and France began to arrive. It's said that the UK contributed around 300 missiles in batches, with an additional 50 from France. Valued between $1 and $2.5 million each and possessing a staggering range of over 155 miles, these missiles promised to deliver devastating effects on fortified enemy positions. As the months unfolded, the results were nothing short of dramatic. Ukraine unleashed Storm Shadow missiles on the Sevastopol port and targeted Russia's Black Sea Fleet in September 2023. The outcome? Significantly damaging a Russian submarine, a landing ship, and the core headquarters of the fleet itself. By late 2023, the situation escalated further when Ukraine utilized ATACMS missiles for the first time, obliterating 9 Russian helicopters at occupied bases and causing substantial casualties among enemy troops. President Volodymyr Zelensky exclaimed, "They have performed very accurately." Amidst the chaos of war and ever-changing tides, could Ukraine transform its capability to strike decisively against its invading foe? Or would the shadow of doubt linger over its missile programs? As conflict rages on, every missile fired shapes a future fraught with tension and uncertainty. The next developments would reveal whether Ukraine could establish a tactical advantage or find itself at the mercy of its relentless adversary. Previously, Ukraine took a massive step forward by receiving MITICMS from the United States. These missiles struck hard, destroying 9 helicopters at Russian bases deep in occupied territories late in 2023. Dozens of enemy troops were eliminated in these precise, devastating attacks. President Volodymyr Zelensky proudly declared their success, "They have performed very accurately." Since then, Ukraine's forces launched numerous MITICMS strikes. Russian air bases, defense systems, ammo depots, and radar stations all felt the impact. But 2023 was a harsh teacher. Ukraine learned 3 crucial lessons about missile warfare. First, the power of missiles like Storm Shadow was undeniable. The initial strikes crippled vital Russian targets, shaking the enemy's foundation. Kyiv realized that if it could amass a large missile stockpile, it could keep hitting high-value sites relentlessly. Such a campaign could shatter the Kremlin's war machine from within, and maybe even flip the entire conflict's course. Second came a brutal reality check about allies. Although many NATO countries supported Ukraine generously, the supply of missiles was limited and unpredictable. France and the United Kingdom shared some excess missiles but had no plans for ongoing large-scale deliveries. Germany hesitated even more, worried that sending its long-range Taurus missiles might trigger a wider war engulfing Europe. Third, and perhaps most frustratingly, even when weapons arrived, strict rules hampered their use. At first, Ukraine was forbidden from striking targets inside Russia with MITICMS. Similar curbs limited Storm Shadow's deployment. Although these restrictions lifted later, the experience left no doubt: Ukraine must build its own missile programs. It needed unlimited, sovereign control over a domestically produced arsenal, missiles it could fire anytime, anywhere, without asking permission. So, what happened next? How did Ukraine accelerate its missile revolution in the shadow of countless obstacles and fierce enemy attacks targeting missile factories? The answer lies in relentless innovation, ingenious modifications, and a strategic pivot that stunned military experts worldwide. Previously, we saw Ukraine reach a crucial turning point. Despite initial external restrictions on missile use, the country concluded it couldn't depend on allies forever. It needed homegrown missiles, made in large numbers and deployed freely. That decision marked a new chapter in Ukraine's fight, unlocking fresh power beyond mere defense. By mid-2023, Ukraine transformed its Neptune anti-ship missiles into deadly weapons against land targets. One of these missiles obliterated a Russian S-400 radar installation at Cape Tarkhanket, Crimea, a blow that echoed across battle lines. The taste of success whetted Ukraine's appetite for more strikes. Just months later, in September 2023, precision missiles, most likely Storm Shadow models, crippled 2 Russian ships in Sevastopol's harbor. Then in July 2024, missiles reached even further, striking an airbase deep inside Russia near Kursk, miles beyond what anyone thought possible. But this was only the beginning. Ukrainian engineers pushed the Neptune's limits, sketching plans for the Long Neptune, a missile designed to outrange every other weapon in their inventory. It promised to be a true game changer, extending Ukraine's reach and firepower by leaps and bounds. Behind the scenes, a quiet revolution was unfolding. Ukraine partnered with ambitious startups and innovative companies from abroad, building a network to supply vital parts for missiles and long-range drones. This wasn't just desperation, it was a carefully crafted strategy rising from the ashes of infrastructure attacks and supply shortages. With relentless grit, the plan began to bear fruit. By the end of 2024, Ukraine didn't just have missiles, they had fleets of mini-cruise missiles and swarms of long-range drones. Names like Ludiai and FP-1 drones, Ruda and Peklo missiles, became battlefield whispers that struck fear into the enemy. These smaller weapons weren't designed to annihilate buildings or cause massive destruction. Instead, they aimed for surgical disruption, starting fires in factories, crippling enemy aircraft, sabotaging key energy facilities. Each hit was a thread unraveling the Kremlin's war effort. The gradual accumulation of such damage sent ripples through Russian logistical networks. Ukraine cleverly mixed these smaller strikes with its remaining stockpiles of powerful Western missiles and domestically produced heavy hitters like the Neptune series. The result was a mounting headache for Russian forces, who found their supply chains, command hubs, and military assets under constant pressure from multiple directions. But even as these successes mounted, Ukraine was far from satisfied. The next phase promised an escalation so bold it could reshape the entire conflict. What if Ukraine could take these advances and turn them into a storm that Russia couldn't withstand? What volatile new weapons await in the shadows, ready to unleash devastation unlike anything seen before? As the summer of 2025 approaches, Ukraine stands on the edge of a missile revolution. The battlefield isn't just defensive anymore, it's about seizing control, hitting harder, and rewriting the rules of war. What happens next might change the course of history. Can Ukraine's ingenious defense evolve into unstoppable offense? Or will the shadow of scarcity and enemy strikes keep it limited? The next chapter is about to explode. As the conflict between Ukraine and Russia continues to unfold, Ukraine has evolved its missile capabilities in ways that could dramatically shift the balance of power. For much of the war, Ukrainian forces have been on the defensive, pushing back relentless assaults. But now, the tide is changing as Ukraine prepares to launch an offensive that could send shockwaves through Russian ranks. Imagine a battlefield where the air thrums with tension. The sounds of engines roar as waves of drone swarms obscure the sun. Ukraine may have endured countless trials, but now, they are armed with a surprising array of missiles, ready to unleash a barrage unlike anything seen before. The arsenal includes not only the famed R-360 Neptune but groundbreaking new additions that could rain destruction upon enemy targets. The catalyst for this transformation came after Ukraine was forced to stand alone following the 2014 annexation of Crimea. This defining moment shattered the reliance on Russian missile technology, plunging Ukraine into a race to become self-sufficient, innovative, and ultimately more dangerous. Analysts, like Fabian Hoffman, highlight this rapid evolution, noting how even amidst chaos, Ukrainian ingenuity began to shine, developing missiles and defense systems from a patchwork of Soviet-era remnants and fresh innovations. And just as the storm brewed overhead in March 2025, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky proudly announced the deployment of the Long Neptune missile, adding a powerful long-range weapon to their arsenal. Capable of reaching a staggering distance of 1,000 kilometers. It marked a significant leap. Suddenly, key Russian installations, once considered safe, found themselves within range of Ukrainian artillery, igniting an unprecedented shift in the warfare dynamics. As the weeks passed, July 2024 became a pivotal moment. Reports surfaced of modernized strikes that sent tremors through Russian defenses, culminating in a shocking revelation: the enhanced Neptune could now threaten land-based targets with precision. Videos circulated online, displaying the sleek contours of this new missile, revealing its potential to wreak havoc on previously untouchable positions. But with such power comes the burden of expectation. Ukraine learned that while international support flowed, it could not rely solely on foreign technology to maintain momentum. The military recognized that it needed to innovate further, leading to the birth of another weapon, the Sapsan, Ukraine's first domestically produced ballistic missile, said to exceed the capabilities of even the U.S. Atoms. Would this missile change the tide of conflict once and for all? In the midst of warfare's bleak landscape, the dawn of new technologies illuminated a path forward for Ukraine's military. But as nations across the globe watched closely, question marks loomed. Was this newfound strength enough to propel Ukraine to victory? With anticipation building around each strike, the world held its breath, waiting to see how Ukraine would wield this formidable arsenal against its adversaries, and whether the long Neptune and its ilk would indeed deliver on their lofty promises. Before we dive into the full story, let me remind you what happened last time. Ukraine revealed glimpses of the long Neptune missile during their Independence Day celebrations. This new weapon seemed bigger, stronger, and deadlier, promising a game-changing reach far beyond anything they had before. Now, here's what the experts uncovered when they closely examined the details. Imagine a missile nearly 20 feet long, over 6 meters, towering far beyond the size of the original Neptune. Its girth is impressive too, stretching about 20 inches across, almost half a meter wide. That's almost 40% wider than the earlier model, with larger wings and tail fins designed not only to carry it farther but to strike with greater precision. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claims this missile can fly an astonishing 1,000 kilometers, or roughly 621 miles. That distance is about 4 times further than the powerful Storm Shadow missile Ukraine already uses. Why does this matter? Because it means Kyiv can now threaten targets deep inside Russian territory, factories, refineries, logistics centers, and airbases that were once safe out of reach. The same kinds of high-value locations Ukraine's forces have been striking for months with drones and smaller missiles. Until now, those attacks caused disruption but often lacked the firepower to inflict lasting damage. The introduction of long Neptune flips that script. Picture this, a swarm of drones pounding an airfield, forcing enemy defenses to lay down a complex, chaotic curtain. Then, with that curtain drawn, a long Neptune missile slams into its target with devastating force. It's a lethal one-two punch designed to overwhelm and shatter. The sound of alarms blaring at Russian bases, the acrid smell of smoke rising from storage facilities, the ground trembling from distant explosions. This weapon could be a turning point, a critical step toward breaking the Kremlin's grip on the war. But here's the twist you might not expect. Despite this newfound reach and power, Ukraine didn't simply stumble upon this technology overnight. The missile reflects years of learning, sacrifice, and a desperate drive to end the conflict on their own terms. While Russia hammered Ukrainian factories and missile sites early in the invasion, Kyiv never gave up. Behind the scenes, engineers rebuilt, adapted, and pushed Ukrainian missile tech into uncharted territory. So, just how far can this missile carry Ukraine's strike power? And what does this mean for the future battles lurking ahead? The truth will shock even the most seasoned observers. Stay with me, because the story is just getting started, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The story of Ukraine's transformation on the battlefield unfolds against a backdrop of relentless aggression and profound change. In the early days of conflict, Ukraine found itself under siege, reeling from wave upon wave of Russian offensives. The skies darkened with the drones that harassed daily life, while Ukrainian forces fought tenaciously to maintain their ground. Yet, in the face of such adversity, resilience emerged, giving birth to a new chapter of Ukrainian military innovation. Casualties on both sides were staggering, but slowly, kernels of hope began to sprout. Ukraine, bolstered by determination, set its sights on a significant shift, an offensive move against the aggressive invasions. This time, it was not merely about holding the line. It was about taking the fight back, driven by an arsenal of missiles cradled in secrecy, now poised for action. Insightful analysis from defense experts like Fabian Hoffman unveiled the rigorous strides Ukraine had taken in missile technology over the past decade. Historically dependent on Russian support following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine's reliance was shattered in 2014 when Crimea was annexed. This marked a pivotal moment, forcing Ukraine to rapidly evolve its missile capabilities. By 2022, remnants of the Soviet military-industrial complex began to repurpose. Yet, against a backdrop of Russian airstrikes targeting essential infrastructure, the development seemed fraught with significant challenges. Subsequently, Ukraine began to streamline its missile programs, focusing all critical resources on those that promised the most strategic advantage. The air erupted in applause when Ukraine's forces successfully utilized the R-360 Neptune missiles to strike at Russian naval assets. Empowered by ingenuity, engineers sought innovative adaptations for these weapons, transitioning them into multi-use platforms capable of hitting both sea and land targets. But then came the game-changer. Western allies began supplying long-range missiles such as Storm Shadow and ATACMS, unveiling a new chapter for Ukraine. With each shipment, the balance appeared to tip in Ukraine's favor. As missiles rained upon the Russian fleet, a profound realization emerged: these weapons could carve a path to the heart of the Russian military machine. Empowered by this newfound capability, Ukraine not only began to understand the potential of its missile systems, but the power inherent in self-sufficiency became clear. The dawn of 2023 saw Ukraine developing its own, now modified capabilities ready to uproot Russian strongholds. The birth of the Sapsan missile, an evolution of the RIM-2, soon loomed on the horizon, promising an operational range of up to 310 miles and a warhead weighing over 1,000 pounds. Amidst spiraling losses, this new addition to Ukraine's arsenal could very well signal a pivotal turning point, allowing for precise strikes against high-value Russian targets. While Russia previously unleashed havoc with little regard for civilian life, Ukraine reaffirmed its commitment to targeting military infrastructure only. In a military landscape defined by choice and consequence, this decision could drastically shift the momentum toward Ukrainian forces. Now, as Ukraine gears up for mass production of these powerful ballistic missiles, the anticipation in the air is palpable. The potential to strike with unmatched speed and ferocity, over 4 times the speed of sound, beholds a chilling possibility for the Kremlin. The question remains, with these advancements, how will the balance of power shift in this ongoing conflict? As the two sides continue their deadly games, the outcome hangs precariously in the balance. In a dramatic turn of events, the battlefields of Ukraine have transformed into a high-stakes race for missile supremacy. As the conflict rages on, the nation that once fought defensively has shifted gears, ready to unleash a comprehensive offensive. With a massive arsenal of missiles at its disposal, Ukraine is no longer just fending off attacks, it's preparing for its counterstrike. Flashback: imagine standing in a cold, dimly lit bunker, the air thick with the acrid smell of smoke. The distant rumble of artillery can be felt in your bones, while your heart races with the urgency of survival. Memories of the early days are haunting, when an unsuspecting predator, Russia, loomed over, relentless and aggressive. Those moments still echo as echoes of determination ripple through Ukraine's fortified ranks. But as we fast forward to 2023, a technological evolution is taking shape. Analysts and experts, like Fabian Hoffman from the Oslo Nuclear Project, have unveiled a landscape where the battlefield is defined by missile precision and speed. Ukraine's missile capabilities have blossomed significantly since their reliance on Russian components and technology ended abruptly in 2014. Fear transformed into a fierce resolve that ignited innovation, birthed new projects, and led to an explosion of creativity in military technology. On a crucial front, Ukraine's arsenal has blossomed with formidable new assets, including the long-range Storm Shadow and Sikorsky missiles from the UK and France. Each missile, worth between $1 and $2.5 million, stretches over 250 kilometers, making them devastatingly capable of striking deep into enemy territory. The success stories are mounting, with reports of storm shadows wreaking havoc on Russian naval installations, creating chaos amid their fleet. Yet challenges remain. In early skirmishes, Ukraine faced interruptions to its nascent missile programs, facing aggressive strikes on crucial industrial sites by Russia. These attacks left their mark, forcing Ukrainian forces to pivot their plans, but they did not extinguish the flame of innovation. The necessity for self-reliance became evident. Limitations on receiving consistent missile supplies from allies sparked a relentless pursuit to enhance domestic production. As the clock ticks on, newly developed missiles like the Sapsan and Long Neptune are sparking excitement among military strategists. With warheads much larger than previous models and speeds that leave less time for enemy defenses to react, these new technologies promise to reshape the tactical battlefield landscape. Expert analyses paint a vivid picture of their potential to obliterate critical logistics centers and cripple the adversary's supply lines. But will Ukraine's dreams of missile dominance become a reality? As rumors swirl of these new weapons already engaged in combat, the stakes of this evolving conflict are higher than ever. This pivotal moment dawns with a question: can Ukraine truly rise to challenge the imposing military machine of Russia? The truth unfolds as both nations brace for the unprecedented confrontations ahead, launching strikes that could determine the fate of not just a nation, but the very course of history. Will Ukraine succeed in transforming mere debris into a blossoming missile industry powerhouse? With ambition, resilience, and cutting-edge technology, the answer lies in wait. In the shadows of warfare, Ukraine's armed forces have withstood relentless Russian aggression, forced onto the defensive while daily drone swarms and relentless assaults echoed in their ears. But the tide is shifting. No longer will they simply defend. Ukraine is preparing to unleash a powerful arsenal of missiles, ready to retaliate, striking back with fury against the relentless invaders. Recently, defense analyst and missile expert Fabian Hoffman took a deep dive into Ukraine's extraordinary evolution in missile technology over the last decade. Once beholden to Russia for missile components, this relationship shattered in 2014 when Russia illegally annexed Crimea, transforming it into a fierce enemy of Ukraine. With the disintegration of this old alliance, Ukraine had to pivot rapidly. Existing Soviet-era facilities operated by firms like Yuzhnoye and Yuzhmash became vital lifelines, rekindling Ukraine's ambition to carve out an independent missile industry. Despite this burgeoning capability, the war's outbreak in early 2022 laid bare harsh realities. Ukraine's missile stockpiles paled in comparison to Russia's overwhelming arsenal. As attacks intensified, Russian forces targeted Ukraine's missile industries, crippling production efforts and further squeezing limited resources. The nation was grappling with the dual necessity of self-defense and missile development, a precarious balancing act fraught with danger. But, amid the chaos, hope began to arise. By summer 2023, Ukraine received long-range Storm Shadow and Scalp-G missiles from Western allies, which marked a turning point. Armed with these, they struck vital Russian assets, showcasing the potential of precise missile strikes that could damage Ukraine's enemy significantly. What will happen when opposing forces realize there's a new power in Ukraine's arsenal? President Volodymyr Zelensky hailed the effectiveness of these strikes. They have performed very accurately. Yet, not all was straightforward. The initial limitations placed by allies on missile usage raised serious questions about Ukraine's strategic autonomy. Despite the hurdles, Ukraine's engineers diligently innovated. They retooled the R-360 Neptune, transforming its design to strike land-based targets, a secret weapon ready to deploy against the heart of enemy lines. Their resolve bore fruit when the Neptune successfully dismantled a critical Russian missile defense radar. But just when victory seemed within reach, another twist unfolded. By late 2024, as Ukraine unveiled a groundbreaking addition to its arsenal, the Flamingo FP5, it became clear that the country was on the precipice of transforming its military capabilities. This missile promised to soar over 3,000 kilometers, delivering a crushing 1,150-kilogram warhead, built with startling swiftness in fewer than 9 months, defying all odds. Yet, the Flamingo also faced ridicule due to its bright pink tip, a simple factory mishap that sparked laughter amid the harrowing backdrop of war. Yet laughter turned to awe when reports dubbed it Ukraine's strongest security guarantee. With visionary leadership, Irina Terek, CEO of the producing company, declared ambitions of producing 200 flamingos per month. Could this missile really be the game changer? Experts suggest that if Ukraine could field thousands of these missiles, a decisive shift in the war might not just be a possibility but a guarantee. The stakes couldn't be higher. With the Flamingo, the Long Neptune, and new technologies in development, Ukraine's missile capabilities are escalating. Would these developments bring an end to the relentless aggression of Russia? As they build up their arsenal, the world watches closely. Will Ukraine rise or fall back under the weight of history? One thing remains certain: the echoes of warfare are changing, and the future is now shrouded in mystery and anticipation. In the escalating conflict, Ukraine has not only endured relentless assaults but has also entered a crucial phase. The tide is turning as Kyiv prepares to unleash its cutting-edge missile arsenal, including the formidable Long Neptune and the potent Sapsan. These missiles have the potential to strike deep into enemy territory and cripple Russian logistics. Imagine the sound of roaring engines piercing through the sky, the reverberation of missile launches echoing like thunder. Each strike from Ukraine is more than just military action, it symbolizes resilience and defiance against overwhelming aggression. As the plan unfolds, rumors circulate of devastating hits on critical infrastructure within Russia itself, igniting a firestorm of concern in the Kremlin. But what if this is just the beginning? Could Ukraine's newfound missile capabilities tilt the balance of power? The pressure mounts as Western allies continue their support, supplying advanced missiles that could alter the course of the war. Yet, Kyiv understands the stakes. It must pave its own path, cultivating a robust domestic missile industry. Behind the scenes, engineers are working tirelessly, innovating and adapting. The Flamingo, a new missile with a striking 1,150-kilogram warhead, promises to redefine battlefield dynamics. Its distinctive name stems from an unexpected factory mishap, revealing that even in chaos, creativity can bloom. As anticipation builds, could this missile become Ukraine's ultimate game-changer? Analysts suggest that if Kyiv can mass-produce these weapons, it could deliver crippling blows to Russia's military infrastructure. Imagine entire logistic hubs collapsing under the weight of relentless fire. Yet, with great power comes significant risk. Ukraine's leaders must navigate the minefield of international diplomacy while ensuring their homeland's security. As the clock ticks, they are finally entering a phase where they can not only defend but also retaliate with overwhelming force. In these uncertain times, will Ukraine rise to meet its destiny or falter under the pressure? The answer lies in their resolve and the strategic deployment of their missile capabilities, promising a dramatic shift in the ongoing conflict. The world watches closely, knowing that a turning point may be at hand. For now, Ukraine stands on the verge of unleashing a wave of firepower that could reshape the battlefield forever.